Yeah.
A lot of candy.
She said she didn't need any.
I think this is really cartoons in their one. I know, right?
Thanks for looking out.
You're helping us
Well,
out.
two guys on this side of the table won't participate in this, so, yeah.
Well, I was just going to be sending you this over there, but he said no.
Well, let's just wait until he gets this down a little bit, and then we'll refill. We'll see if we need a break tonight.
She made me for, I remember my wife had said birthday, so maybe low cal.
Okay, it's 5:30, and I'd like to call the City Council study session and special focus area for July 24th, 2017 to order, and we will start with roll call.
Deputy Mayor Wells.
Here,
Councilmember Baggett.
absent, excused vacation.
Councilmember DeCoursey.
Here?
Councilmember Holman.
Here.
Councilmember Pelosi.
Here.
Councilmember Trout-Manuel.
Here.
Councilmember Wagner.
Here.
Okay, any announcements or reports or presentations that need to be considered or added to the list that are not on the agenda?
No, Chair.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move into agenda items for our council discussion, and we are going to start with a presentation on the Alan Moore Behavioral Hospital that's proposed for Tacoma. And I'll turn it over to you.
So I'm Ann McBride. I'm Vice President for Behavioral Health Services and other post-acute for CHI Franciscan. And we don't have a formal presentation. We are actually hoping to respond to your questions. But I'll let Ingrid introduce herself in a minute, but I'll tell you that the project is on target to open by the end of 2018 with hopefully our first patients. We'll be able to service our first patients in early 2019. We believe that we will, we know that we will be on target for the budget, and I don't know if you've been by that location on the Alan Moore campus. The construction fencing is up, the signs are up, and what used to be Wing A is now demolished. Mm-hmm. So it's just a lot of dirt. So we will be having a groundbreaking ceremony on September 29th. So if you have any questions for us, I'd be happy to answer them. But I'd like to have Ingrid introduce herself.
Ingrid Mangia, Government Relations, Multi-Care Health System. I think it's a rare occasion that we have two Ingrids in the room, so I need to acknowledge that. Yes. So I believe the South Sound Behavioral Health Coalition presented to you on March 20th about the project and discussed the different community groups in the different cities and now Pierce County and other private donations that are giving to the hospital. 120-bed psych hospital. I think the stats are pretty familiar nationwide. There are 26 beds per 100,000 people. In the state of Washington, there are 10 beds per 100,000 people. And in South King, Pierce County, there are 2.8 beds per 100,000 people. So the leaders of CHI Franciscan and Multi-Care Health System came together seeing this as a mental health crisis. We are a community in need. We are treating these patients in our emergency rooms and in our jails. So the hope is that we will build this hospital. It's not a hope, we are actually building it. So, and that people can be treated there, either voluntary or in a voluntary. And so it was our understanding that we were to come and we were to answer any questions that you may have. And I believe Deputy Mayor Wells had asked for, had asked for a chart on those that the cities that we have asked, broken down by their population and their status. So we have provided that in your packets to everyone, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Councilmember Pelosi.
Thank you. Why is Auburn selected as a donor?
Sure. So Auburn has parts of Pierce Senate, and also the residents in Auburn and South King area will be served by this hospital.
looking at the list, if I can continue. Looking at the list, there are pretty much cities south of us, Federal Way not participating at this time, Lakewood not participating at this time. I would just, most of these cities are nearer Tacoma than we are. So I still don't understand the rationale.
Well, oh, go ahead. Would you like to
So,
speak to that?
I guess that historically, behavioral health, mental illness has been separately paid for through the federal government and the state government differently than medical care. And there has been strong boundaries by county. That is being softened right now with some, the transformation of healthcare by plan by Governor Inslee, but that by 2020, medical care and behavioral health care will be integrated. So both Multicare and Franciscan, together with all the hospitals in the state and the accountable communities of health, are working towards integration of behavioral health into medical care. What we know from our experience, and I'm speaking primarily from CHI Franciscan, is that although we have a mental health unit at St. Joe's Medical Center, patients come to us into the emergency room from anywhere that they could get to Tacoma in, including South King County, even parts of the peninsula. So we will be accepting patients in the new hospital from King County. We'll be serving those that come to us for help. We're happy to actually, we will be tracking kind of where their current location is, and we've actually already offered that to some of the other cities, that we're happy to show you at the end of the first year or second year kind of how many patients we served from would be this community, and we can do that.
Multi-care hospital here, they have, what, 20, 30 mental health beds?
40.
It's in,
Right.
it's in the 40s because we have a
40,
geriatric
so-
unit and then we have
so-
the, right.
It appears to me that the city of Auburn, we have a complement now for that type of usage. Why would we want to go to Tacoma?
A few things. One, the beds here at Auburn Medical Center are primarily being used for involuntary treatment. So if someone acknowledges that they need treatment, they have a really hard time getting in here. So they would be able to go down to Allen Moore campus. Secondly, in an emergency, first responders will be able to go directly to the behavioral health hospital that will have a mental health ER, if you will. It's called a crisis stabilization unit. Instead of having to go to the ED here, be seen, and then put back in and transported.
I have one more question.
Councilmember Pelosi.
What area of Allen Moore? I'm familiar with the Elks building. Is that gone? Or is that?
Yes, that
That's
Elks
gone.
building is gone.
It's gone.
Yes, it
So,
is.
of course,
That's a parking lot. The Walmart's there now,
The golf course is across the street.
where the Elks moved.
Oh, the Elks, okay. So now where is the hospital going to be sited?
This
From
hospital
that-
is right at the corner. This will build out from the Allen Moore campus building, the Allen Moore building, where Wing A was, but extend out almost to the very corner of 19th and Union. So it'll be a pretty obvious presence on that very busy intersection. And I recall, I can't quite remember the setback, but it's not very far from the actual street. We're coming into what was a parking lot, where the building will be over what was an existing parking lot. There'll be other parking that will be created.
Councilmember Trout Manuel.
When I heard this at our council meeting, I was kind of surprised because Pierce County, our Pierce County is a small sliver. And so 400,000 for that Pierce County area to me seemed like a lot of money. So are you going to be addressing also the people from our King County?
Yes.
And aren't we already addressing those here, like Mr. Pelosi said, at our beds with our 40-some beds that we have? Aren't we already taking care of those people?
Well, not all the services are here at the Multicare Auburn site. You have a geropsych unit, so that's for those that are over 65, and an adult in what's called an involuntary unit, so those that are here because they have been judged to be legally detained, they're at harm for themselves or another person. So there will be at the Allenmore campus, for one thing, there'll be 120 beds in addition to the about 40-some beds that are here at Auburn. And there are patients that do come from South King County down to Tacoma, will come, I'm sure, once we have more capacity, because we're underbedded in King County too, not as bad as Pierce, but and there will be, as Ingrid mentioned, there's what's called a crisis stabilization unit, which is for people, frankly, that are kind of destabilized, emotionally distraught, can be there supported by professionals, potentially some medicated support, so that maybe within 24, 48 hours, they can actually kind of center again and be able to kind of not be admitted into the hospital. I mean, the intention is, and there's both kind of places for people to sit as well as people to lie down and be kind of lower stimulation, kind of help them.
So how many are you treating right now in the facility that you have from us?
So the only beds there are in Pierce County that aren't Western State are the 23 beds at St. Joe's Medical Center, and it's a voluntary unit. So we don't, at St. Joe's, we can't take care of patients that are legally detained. They would be detained either at Auburn or Fairfax, which is up in Kirkland. I mean, there aren't that many places. Nabos over in West Seattle.
I guess my problem is that there's a lot of cities here and 120-some beds. I don't see how many of our people are going to be served in that capacity.
It's hard to predict.
$400,000.
Right. It's hard to predict. Our ask is for all part of what we've been doing, the coalition has been doing for the past 6 or 8 months, has been actually making requests of various local municipalities. What we hear, and it's been pretty heartwarming actually, is the police chiefs in many of the jurisdictions or the fire chiefs are really at a loss for what to do with some of these folks they pick up on the street. And they really get that we need more capacity in Pierce in order to serve these patients and the family members that are with the patients. So frankly, Multicare was willing to house this hospital on their existing site, and Franciscan and Multicare are working together to kind of create a really special place. Now, I don't know how many patients out of the Auburn city limits will come to that facility in the first year or two, but we'd be happy to give you some sense back afterwards if you'd like. I know that we did that with, I can't remember, we've promised that to a couple of the cities, just to make sure that you have that information.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
We'd be happy to do that.
Councilmember DeCoursey?
Thank you. I want to focus a little bit on the state's involvement. So we have a pledge from the state of $5 million. To me, a pledge is one thing, but putting the money in the bank is always another thing. We do not have a capital budget, so that's affecting a lot of things that are happening. And then on the competitive grant process for Department of Commerce, can you share with me the process of these competitive grants? Is this exclusively to this type of facility, or is it combined with other capital projects? And you see it's exclusive to this kind of facility?
Yes.
So it tells me in some sense you're the only one applying for the grant?
No.
Okay.
That would be lovely,
So,
but that's
okay,
not
so
the
if you
case.
explain that'd be helpful, but
Sure.
my main concern is that if the pledge of the $5 million does not come through for Washington State, what does that do to impact the project and the timing of the project?
Sure. So the $5 million pledge is from 2015, and so it has come through.
Okay.
In this year's capital budget, we actually have $3 million. It would be nice if they would come
In
back to
addition
the
to the $5
table.
million?
Yes, in addition. It would be nice if they came back to the table and finished what they had started, but I don't know if they're going to be able to do that. Yeah.
Councilmember Holman, or did you have a follow-up?
Well, just on the competitive grant process.
Sure.
Who else would apply for this?
On the
type of-
grants, it would be other systems who are building psych hospitals. So it'd be like Providence, Fairfax. I think it could be profit and
Right.
nonprofit.
Right.
Yeah, but it was a wide range, but it had to be building mental health capacity.
Sorry, but because there's no capital budget, the Department of Commerce is impacted by that, so will these grants also be currently on hold?
For this
next-
time, yes.
For the current biennium, the July one, the biennium that starts October 1, yeah.
Yeah.
July 1.
Councilmember Holman.
The need for this is great in our community, in all of the Washington State and the urban areas. I sit on the SCORE jail board, and about a quarter of the inmates in there have mental health issues. Currently, we're paying, it costs us around $200 per day per inmate to keep someone in jail. When a police officer gets called to handle a mental health call, really the only tool he or she has, if the behavior is quite bizarre, is to arrest the person for a misdemeanor and book them into a jail. A jail is not only no place to house someone who is mentally ill, but it's the most expensive way to take someone off the street and not give them treatment. We would be far better served and to have a trained mental health facility where we could send people. Right now, we have very limited capacity, 20 some odd beds here, but they're usually full. Where do you serve these people? They're taking up a quarter of all our jails or more. In an inappropriate facility that is, quite frankly, extremely expensive to just warehouse someone. Better to, and even though we all get some training in handling the mentally ill, we're not mental health professionals. I could probably still look in my Rolodex and find my 1-800 number to call a mental health professional to evaluate. And just like crime doesn't share a border of Auburn and Kent or King County and Pierce County, neither does mental illness. They migrate. So the fact that we have some place to take them other than jail seems like money well spent to me.
Councilmember Wagner.
When we called it the South Sound facility, I expected people like Renton and Tukwila to be in there, but you talked about some kinds of zones that sort of defined how far north you could go.
So what I was referring to is that there are currently by county, there is what's called a behavioral health organization that authorizes care and tries to move people, particularly people that are involuntarily committed, into a variety of facilities, of which many of them are full all the time. So, so they do what they can do. That has been by county, and like I mentioned, I think that is between now and 2020, that'll be softened somewhat by these accountable communities of health that are being already set up throughout the state. There are 9 of them throughout the state in order to take care and integrate behavioral health with medical care. This is a plan that makes a lot of sense to me because so many people that are even in our hospitals don't just end up in the hospital because of heart failure. They may have bipolar, they may have a variety of different behavioral health issues that are happening. We see that in the hospital all the time too. And this is a hospital that is created just for people that will help them in their mental or emotional distress and or with comorbid conditions or co-occurring diagnoses, substance abuse and mental illness, in a way that is hopefully treatable, support them for a 5 to 7 day stay, which is about what we see at least at St. Joe's in the voluntary unit. So I use the term softening just because it's not as rigid as it has been in the past. I agree that many people don't necessarily, quote, honor the county boundaries, and if they live in Auburn would necessarily they might try to find a bed at Harborview. They do, that's usually their first query, and then they'll seek wherever they can find the help and services. Like I said, we often, from Tacoma, we may send people up to Kirkland, up to Fairfax, or wherever there is a bed at the moment.
So did you ask Renton and Tukwila and those kind of places?
No, we
did not.
but we can certainly ask them.
Yeah.
We don't have, there are no hard and fast rules. You know, we approached those cities and towns and counties that that are close and that we have a facility in, and that people go there and they have a trusted doctor. So if you have a doctor at the Auburn Medical Center here and you go there, you have a family member that goes there and they're in distress, you know, they're going to say, I think it would be a good idea if you go down to the hospital in Tacoma. They're going to be able to help you out.
Well, I'm sold on the idea. I'm not sold yet that we're paying our fair share. That's why I asked about people.
So, right, so there was no magic science to coming up with the, ask. You know your budget the best. For example, we asked Pierce County for 1.75. It came down to it. What they could really do was 1. You know what? And we're thrilled. We are very thankful for a partnership. So if this is a number that isn't going to work for you, we are more than happy to work on a different number. Absolutely. We're not married to this.
Yes. I thought at the time that you requested the certificate of need from the state, that you gave the information that you would need no funding, that you had all the current funding necessary. And that was reported in the paper, and I'm just surprised to see so much need all of a sudden.
That wasn't the exact question on the certificate of need application. It asks, are you able to pay for this project? Yes, we are able to pay for this project. However, if we pay for all of this project, $46 million to build, $18 million to get it up and running, that is going to take money from other projects we do in the community. So here we're building a new ER. We just finished building the 20 inpatient psych beds. There's talk in the community that they would like some more space here in other ways. So those are kinds of projects that we do, but this is also a community issue. And we got here because of all the lack of services in the area. So because it's a community issue, we feel that it requires a community response.
The community was involved in the emergency room. And we have a significant foundation that's dealing with the rest of the hospital. And now we've got another foundation that's dealing with Covington.
But it doesn't cover 100% of the costs.
No, but
foundations don't.
No.
And the foundation is working with us on this project as well.
So I think just to augment what Ingrid said, for purposes of Multicare and Franciscan came together to say, we think we need to build this hospital, and we will make sure that this hospital gets built at this scope, you know, in this time period. And for regulatory reasons, we have to file with the state what's called a certificate of need, which includes both what the patients that we're going to serve as well as what the financial implications of it. Multicare and Franciscan, together with this new joint venture, will in fact build this building. What Ingrid, and it's a subtle point, but it's a very important point. If you've got chronic mental illness, and think to those people in your life that either have chronic substance abuse issues or chronic mental illness, the number of times that they're inpatient hospitalized is a few times in a lifetime of severe chronic illness. Much of their care is done in the community and outpatient settings by a variety of supportive housing, you know, all of that sort of thing. If we know this building is going to cost $45.5 million, and Multicare and Franciscan will make absolutely sure that this building is built. We ask for community partners so that if we don't have to spend the full $45 million, we can start some of the outpatient programs, some of the community services programs earlier. It's not like we won't do them, but they're so much a part of the continuum of care. So for me, it has to do with timing and the commitment, the community commitment together with us. We will build this hospital.
Chief Lee, did you want to share with us some of your thoughts or questions? Or
Yes, I'd just like to say certainly support the ability to have more beds. It's ironic today that Officer Gould sent me an email talking about the mental health calls, welfare checks that we've been going to. And that does include suspicious subjects or unwanteds that have mental health issues. But he, I don't have the stats, but other than what he told me, we're responding to about 19 welfare checks per day. On July 10th, we responded to 27. Many of those people are in distress, mental illness.
And this volume, if you were to give us some kind of a report regarding what you just said about how many your officers are coming up against, I think that'd be valuable information.
I could provide that, sure.
Okay.
it would be helpful for me if we could have some of the attendance, if you want to call it that, data from Auburn General, because I've contacted a couple of the Board of Trustees, and they've told me that there was lots of space, not that there was lots of space available. And I wonder what we could do with the $400,000 in Auburn or at the going to be constructed Covington. But I also want to comment that I went out and raised money myself. I went out and got a little job, and then I got my husband to match the funds, and we gave to the emergency room, and then I worked with everybody else to go out and get for Covington and the rest of Auburn. And it, to me, just, I feel like now coming to the city, it's just a big, deep pocket. And especially when I've been led to believe that there was sufficient funds, and then we're raising extra here in this community for our own. But I need to say that I'm not blind to special needs, and people that have mental illness or any kind of chronic illness in this day and age, to expect that it can be solved by going to the emergency room or a night at the hospital. Everything we have now is very, very complex. But I believe in spending Auburn's money in Auburn first, and would like to see what other maybe unfeasible options are out there so that we could kind of throw them around. Council member.
I just have one question. Out of all these cities here, how many of them were at the table when this decision was being made? And where did the $400,000 figure come from?
There was, you mean the decision on the ask,
Yeah.
on the number?
Were all these people at the table, and where did
No.
It wasn't elected officials. On the coalition, there are elected officials, as Mayor Backus is, Mayor Strickland is, Pierce County Chair Richardson, used to be Senator Dan Meyer now, Executive Dan Meyer. There are lots of different elected officials on the coalition, but they didn't all sit around the table and say, I think so. It was the leadership from the Alliance with our consultant, myself, leadership at Franciscan and CHI, and a multi-care that came together with the list. And then we went around and we're doing one-on-ones. First we meet with the mayor and the city manager in each city. And then we come back and we make a presentation to the council. And then we come back to study sessions. And I come back and I meet one-on-one with council members and see if they have any questions or concerns, or if there's other data that they would like to see. So it's really a continuing discussion.
Talking to me about
Because you were out because your sister was ill. So yes, but I saw everyone else at this table.
But I also have to agree with Deputy Mayor Wells. I would like to see us take care of Auburn first and then go out to our neighboring people, because we have a lot of needs here as well. And having those 40-some beds that we have, it would be kind of nice also to do something here for our people. So that's how I feel.
Councilmember Wagner.
The Federal Way not participating at this time, do you have any estimate of if they are going to? And if they don't, will they be still able to use this facility just as easily as those of us who contribute?
So we started a conversation with Federal Way when they were in a difficult financial situation. And they were in the process of building their performing arts center. And they were running into some financial difficulty. So at that time, they decided that it wasn't good for them. Since then, we've had some individual conversations with some city council members that have asked us to come back and have the conversation again. And we will be doing that. But again, it's a process, and we want to be respectful of everyone's own financial situation.
How many beds down Federal Way or Lakewood? They have access to Madigan, and are there any beds that they have available at Madigan, being a #1 or whatever trauma center?
Madigan is a level 2. They're in the Tacoma Trauma Trust with CHI and multi-care at St. Joe's and Tacoma General.
But to my knowledge, they only take care of active and retired military.
Yeah, they don't have access to the...
I have known people that have kind of gone into their emergency room, but they transport out as soon as the patient is ready to be. So you can't count those beds, I guess is the...
Mayor Backus?
Thank you. So I appreciate the comments about spending our money locally for Auburn residents, and that's always our first priority. But as we've heard with some of the human services organizations that we contribute to, just because they are not physically located in Auburn does not mean that they are not providing much needed services to the residents of Auburn. And let's just say that there was $400,000 available. We can't tell multi-care, we have $400,000 for you, but you have to use it for behavioral health beds at your Auburn facility, because that's not part of their capital plan. Their capital plan has the 40 beds, 20 of them being Jerry Psych, and 20 of them, as you've heard numerous times tonight, that are involuntary. That does not mean that they have beds available for voluntary treatment. And so CHI, Franciscan, and Multicare have identified the Allen Moore location as that place where they will provide those services. So while it would be lovely, I'm sure there would be people complaining that we were building a behavioral health hospital in the city of Auburn if it were going to be built in Auburn. I mean, let's be honest, there are going to be some that like it and there would be some that wouldn't. The fact of the matter is, there are no boundaries. People do not care if they live in South King County or North Pierce County. If they need behavioral health care, they need behavioral health care. And our jails, as Pierce County Sheriff Pastor has said, I am tired of being an expensive behavioral health hospital. That is not what we do. We are not staffed for it, we are not good at it, and it's far too expensive for us to try and do it. Similar comments have been made when we've asked about it at a SCORE jail meeting, the board meetings every month. And so our ER as well, Dr. Anderson and others have made comments about how we are not the right place to house people out in the hallways for days while there is a behavioral health bed found for the individual. That is not providing dignity to the patient by being out in the hallway for days at a time. And I'm sure most of us, if we can think of someone who has benefited from behavioral health help or has needed it in the past and has not been able to get it. I tell the story often of my niece who has tried to commit suicide about 7 times. She's now 19 years old, 20, and she has tried to commit suicide 7 times. Some of those times she has been stuck in a hospital bed in the hallway of a hospital for days, not getting any of the treatment that's necessary. I commend these 2 hospitals and the organizations that have already come together pledging their support for this hospital because it is a much needed facility, 47th in the nation for behavioral health care for the state of Washington. Is not something we should be proud of, and it is something we should all get behind to ensure that the people in our community have access to this. We talk about the issue of drug abuse in our community, well, and homelessness. Until we can address the underlying causes for it, we are never going to be able to address homelessness. We have to address the underlying causes, and over 50% of those individuals who are out on the streets have either a mental health issue, a drug addiction, or a co-diagnosis. And we have got to find a way to help those individuals up and out of the situation that they're in.
You know, I think it's really very important that when we deal with these complex issues, that in order to have success with these individuals that may be receiving these services, that they have the support of the family. Not only do we have to help the individuals, we have to help the family members, giving them coping skills, and then sometimes they need some interventions too. When you look at the citizens of Auburn, even those that live in Pierce County, they don't travel to Pierce County for their services. They tend to go northward. I'm very interested, especially since we're in the building stages still of Covington and our own hospital here, that we see what could be done to increase and give more flexibility maybe to the 40 beds that we have here as just another option. And as I look at what we're proposing, I took population and divided it by contribution, and this time I did it your way instead of my way. And I see that Pierce County is paying $1.25 per bed, and we would be paying $5. And I think there needs to be something to kind of look at that. The other area of irritation that I have is a year ago when I was on the Pierce County Small Cities and Towns, we had a representative come to that organization and tell us that that's what Auburn was going to be contributing, was $400,000. And so to wait a year and then find out more. So we just want a little more information and see if there's some other types of applications. the strength of Auburn has always been its big heart. And we do know we have a need, but we like to keep our heart at home and give it the best that we can give it. Are there any, yes, Councilmember Wagner.
What's the timing for the contribution? Can it spread over 20 years, 2 years, 1 year?
Well, the cost to construct the building will be completed by early 2019. So the money, we request that the money come in within the next year.
We've talked about with some over 2 or 3 years.
Any other questions? And we've got some requests, some more requests for data. We really, really appreciate your directness and your, the facts that you have and your time and your willingness to meet with us individually. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
We appreciate your spending this much time on this issue. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Oh, this is our favorite. Okay. Go. This is item B, Deputy Mayor Selection Ad Hoc Committee Report, and I won't give it a number. No number. Okay, we'll turn it over to you, Councilmember DeCoursey.
Thank you. So the committee, Councilmember Pelosi, Councilmember Trout-Manuel, myself, reconvened this afternoon. The assistance of Attorney Hyde. And I'll be very brief with this. What we have before you is a revision of the rules of procedure for Section 12 for Deputy Mayor. And the last time we made this presentation, the only difference between the prior presentation document and this one is this document on page 1 adds item A4 and A5. And I will read A4 and A5. A4, it says, other than for the automatic nomination of the most senior council member who has not previously served as deputy mayor, all other nominations for the position of deputy mayor should be made by members of the city council on the dates of election for deputy mayor position. And item A5, in connection with the selection of deputy mayor, it is strongly suggested that council members approach the election in an open, transparent, respectful manner, avoiding anything that jeopardizes harmony among council members. So we have looked at the process where the senior-most council member is an automatic nominee. Other nominations for the selection come from the floor. And the committee is recommending, again, that we bring this forward to a vote at the next council meeting next Monday.
Any questions? I think you've worn us down. Okay.
I got a question. It's kind of related to this, but it's not exactly, it may not end up in this resolution. What is the timing of electing or appointing a mayor? In other words, how long would the deputy mayor have to serve as mayor if the mayor was incapacitated or dead?
Well, now, that is not a very nice idea.
Well, but it's part of what makes me think about how the selection process should go is the deputy mayor ever going to have to serve for a year or every more than a month? I think there's something buried in the rules of procedure that addresses this, but I can't remember where it's at. And if it isn't there, I think we ought to take care of it now too. That whoever's deputy mayor would have some idea of how long they would be a full-time employee of the city were that be necessary.
I think, Rich, the only thing I can point to is on page 3, where once again we talk about the prolonged absence. Okay. There is a prolonged absence, and many members, correct me if you feel I'm wrong in this, the mayor would be serving in the capacity of the mayor pro tem as the position of deputy mayor into the mayor pro tem for whatever period the mayor is incapacitated. And if it is a point, I guess, and Attorney Hyde can jump in here, if it's at a point where the mayor is unable to serve, then the council has a decision to make regarding the replacement of the mayor.
But I think there is some specific language about that somewhere in the rules of procedure.
Dan, can you help us with this before we get out too far in a bird walk?
The practice that the city council has, and it's not required by the statute, but is that we rotate, or the council has rotated the position of deputy mayor on an annual basis. There's two changes.
That's
So
what
we're
I
talking
was
about.
asking. And the question is, if the mayor is incapacitated or no longer able to serve, how long would the deputy mayor take the place of the mayor until the next special election?
Well, actually, that was dovetailing into what I was next going to say. During that year, if that were to occur, the deputy mayor would fill that position for the term of the deputy mayor. If the mayor were unable to continue longer than that period of time, conceivably, you'd have to reselect a new mayor.
Isn't there, but
By
isn't
statute?
there, the next regular election cycle, if, like, when I was appointed to the city council,
You got your rules of procedure with you?
I was, this is RCW, I think, this isn't, I don't know that this is.
It isn't, if I'm understanding what you're asking, it is not in our city council rules.
No, it's not, it's an RCW, isn't it, about elections of, so when I was appointed to fill a vacancy on the city council, that was in July of 2003. I then had to be put on the ballot to continue that term if I wanted to complete the remainder of that term.
Yes, but if a person is temporarily disabled or
We're
incapacitated,
talking
No, we're
about
death.
no longer able to serve.
if the mayor is no longer able to serve, then what would typically happen is you'd have an election. If the person is, and maybe this should be spelled out, could be spelled out, if it's a temporary disability, even if it's a lengthy disability, there is, the statutes would accommodate a lengthy replacement. If it gets to the point where the mayor would not be able to return, then you'd have a reelection.
At the next November election cycle, or
At the end of this set term.
No, it's not at the end of the full term.
Yeah,
You may
okay.
have, if the mayor can no longer serve, and a good example of that is the mayor moves out of the city. The mayor moves out of the city, that's not a temporary disability, that's a disability. You lose the opportunity to continue being mayor. If that were to occur, then you would have the replacement. If the mayor is temporarily disabled,
We're not talking temporarily, we're
Dead.
talking, we're
Dead.
talking
Or
not
disabled.
available,
You gotta
no
be
longer
explicit.
available to
Well,
serve, Dan.
Dead.
What is the process?
Then-
What is the process? How long would the deputy mayor serve until the next election to identify a new mayor for the city?
Special election.
the deputy mayor would serve until the statute calls for the election of the mayor who is no longer serving.
That's what I was asking, what is the statute?
Well,
Don't ever die on us, Nancy. This is not gonna
okay,
work.
if the
This
mayor-
could give me a heart attack if I can't.
If the mayor died or moved out of the city,
Can't be out, well, maybe she'll come
then
back.
the mayor could obviously no longer serve and would not be looking to return.
Yes.
In that case, you go to the statute that calls for replacement of the mayor by the next election.
The next election.
If the deputy mayor is serving in the temporary incapacity, that goes for the term of the deputy mayor.
Understood. It's still asking about how long would the deputy mayor serve until a mayor would be elected? That's all I'm asking. Let's say whoever the mayor
On a
is.
permanent disability, a permanent.
Let me just give you the example.
Don't make it too long, or John won't like the story.
All right, January of 2018, the mayor moves out of the city and does not plan to return. The deputy mayor, who has been identified by the council, then steps into the role of the mayor. Until when?
And I believe it would be until the next general election.
So that would be 2 years.
Well,
Is it because of the general election for those city? Because cities are on the off years. Or would it be that coming November?
Then I would believe it'd be the next state general election.
So it would be the upcoming November?
Correct.
Okay.
So Dan, I guess my question to you is, since there's an existing RCW that outlines that process, is it necessary to have something in our rules of procedure that says that, or can we just rely upon the RCW that already states that?
I believe we can rely upon the state statute for the permanent loss of the mayor's position, moving out or dying or whatever.
You don't get any more questions.
Stop.
Councilmember Wagner.
Well, I don't think that does it, Dan, because what if the deputy mayor's term runs out before the next election, then what do you do?
If the deputy mayor's term runs out before the next election, although that probably, that may not occur logistically, but if it were to occur, the city council can select a new deputy mayor anytime it wants.
Okay.
Even if that deputy mayor is serving as mayor?
Correct. Right, because the statute that authorizes selection of deputy mayor is every 2 years or as frequently as the city council wants to.
That was a tough one.
So unless there's any other questions, we would like to bring this to council for a vote, resolution to change section 12, deputy mayor of the rules of procedure of the city council of the city of Auburn for next Monday.
Councilmember Pelosi, any thoughts?
I agree.
Okay, thank you.
And I
Okay.
agree.
Okay.
Committee agrees.
Let's move on to item C, business license presentation, 20 minutes. Schneider.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council. Jeff Tate, Assistant Director of Community Development Services. In your packet, you have a slideshow presentation. It's been prepared and provided. Thank you. I think it'll pop up in the TV in just a second. Before jumping into that, first of all, this came several months ago as a request from council to just provide a briefing on our business license process, a little bit about how we compare with other municipalities, and a little bit about our education outreach approach. I'd also like to recognize Darcy Hansen in the audience, who's the Business and Budget Manager for Community Development and Public Works. Yes?
You select yours. There's 3 of them down there.
Why'd you put her up here?
Would you come on up?
Hot seat.
So, again, this, I think it kind of breaks down into 3 pieces. A little bit of a primer on process and what goes into a business license application, how it runs through a city system, a little bit about how we compare, and a little bit about how we deal with compliance, outreach, education, things of that nature. First slide is real basic in terms of where you find business license regulations in the city code. So Title V is the city's business license title. There's a few chapters of code within that title of Auburn City Code. The types of businesses that require a business license, we do general business licenses. You can assume that anything that's based in Auburn requires a business license. Rental housing, both multifamily and single family. Home occupations, businesses that are run out of the home. Contractors that come into the city of Auburn and work on construction projects. And then there's a series of endorsements like solicitors, tow trucks operators, pawnbrokers, a handful of those. There are some different types of businesses that we don't require a license for, and it's a pretty short list, but landscaper, for example, that's not based in Auburn, that comes in and provides yard service for you at your residential property. We don't demand a business license for that type of business. Same with someone who's going to come in and paint your home. and like Federal Express or UPS deliveries that come in and deliver within the city.
Councilmember DeCoursey, and then Councilmember Pelosa.
So Jeff, related to contractors, so if a contractor comes in, let's say they're doing a kitchen remodel for somebody's home, so are they required to pull a business license for that particular work?
Yes.
Councilmember Pelosa.
So why is out of town in parentheses?
Because I didn't want it to be confused with a landscaper that's based in Auburn. So a landscaping business that is based at, 1 Main Street, Auburn, they require a business license because they're based in Auburn. But if they're based in Federal Way and they come into Auburn, that's why. That's in there.
What about a tow truck that's based in Federal Way but comes to Auburn?
Tow truck operators do require licenses.
All of them?
And that's by city code because it's specified in city code.
Councilmember Trout Manuel, you had a question?
The home occupation, what is the requirement? Is it depending on the home? Well, I'll just, like daycare providers, I know you go by square footage. And how about a in-home care? Say they bring in 3 or 4 people in there. What kind of license do they need to do that?
So Title 18, the zoning code, that establishes what the rules are for a home occupation. So you do have to have a business license to operate out of the home. But then you go to Title 18 and you look as to what the standards are. How many employees can you have? How much parking can you have on the property? What are your hours of operation? All of those types of standards are established in the zoning code. And there's 2 levels that are established. So one of them is fairly straightforward. Someone who's operating their accounting business out of their home doesn't really have a lot of customers coming and going, probably doesn't have equipment and vehicles and trucks and things of that nature, doesn't rely upon a lot of signage. That's a very straightforward business license to obtain. And then there's something called a special home occupation permit, which allows you to go up a kind of a more intense level, and that goes through some additional process, additional review before something like that would be considered and permitted.
So would a person that's an educational consultant that periodically goes to a college and makes a presentation on something, would they need a business license?
Yeah.
If they're running it out of their home and using their home as an office, yes. Is that what you were meant?
Like I have
Councilmember Pelosi.
I have a perfect example.
Yeah.
When I lived up by the casino, the lady next door started a beauty salon. And she was going, and I retire, right? And here's all this racket in the morning, 6 a.m. Car doors are slamming. So was my curiosity, I checked with the city. She didn't have a business license. So guess what happened to that relationship?
Is that why you moved? That's why you moved.
That's where you got your haircut.
Oh, and the beauty salon did his haircut.
We get that kind of question frequently. People will call us or visit and ask, if I have no customers ever coming. I have all my business I take away from the home. I get in my personal vehicle and I drive to an off-site location and I consult or something like that. I don't need any signage out in front of my house. Any type of home-based business requires a business license. In terms of the process, it's pretty straightforward, not a lot of steps to it, but an applicant can submit their business license application to the permit center in person, obviously, or via email. We get a lot of them by email. They are routed to 6 reviewers, and the next slide tells you who and why. And review, after it goes through that process, either triggers the approval of the license or it triggers a letter if we need some additional information. And then at the end, the license can either be mailed or picked up. The reviewers are planning, building, fire, utilities, police, and traffic. Planning looks at whether the use is allowed in that zone, and if there's any parking changes, because the nature of a business might be changing. Building is looking at the occupancy of that building to make sure that it meets the building code requirements. Fire's looking at it from a hazardous materials perspective. Utilities looks at backflow and fats, oils, and grease, those types of issues to make sure that the city's utility systems are protected. At times, police will look at certain types of businesses. It's a pretty small list of types of businesses they look at, but they might run a background check. And then traffic is looking at whether the business will generate additional trips, reduce or increase additional trips as a result of a change in business. So think of this like as a commercial building changes over time. There's a tenant in it for 5 or 6 or 7 years, and then that tenant goes away and a new tenant comes in. So it's those types of scenarios that are triggering those reviews.
Councilmember DeCoursey.
Well, Jeff, once again, if I go back to the contractor doing the kitchen remodel, so I would guess or imagine that when they come in and file for a building permit, they're also informed they need a city business license?
Correct. And those business licenses we have to do some checking. Our obligation as a city is to make sure that they have their state contractor's license, to make sure that they have their insurance in check. So we're looking at those items. So once we look at those items, those licenses can be issued on the spot.
How can you, for $50, do those 6 checks?
Is it covering the cost? Is that the question?
No. I mean, unless you're paying below the minimum wage and have volunteers.
Yeah. We're not. I mean, yeah, the reality is our business license fees, and as you'll see in a later slide, very, I don't know if I'd use the word competitive. They're under market.
Yeah, okay.
And so, yeah.
Okay.
Real quick, just on the basics, typical turnaround time for a business license is a couple weeks. It's a $50 fee that hasn't changed since 2003. Occasionally, a $63 inspection fee is triggered. If it's a scenario, envision like a retail store that's turning into a restaurant. There's times that we have to go out and look at the space. There are then the residential fee breakdown. It's based upon the number of dwelling units within that property. And then there's those endorsements like the tow truck endorsements and the pawnbrokers and things of that nature that have a surplus of $20, $30 extra on top of that for the endorsement. And then marijuana and adult entertainment have a $500 endorsement fee in city code. Business licenses are valid for the calendar year, so if you apply today, it will expire December 31st, and you'll have to renew for 2018. Annual renewals sent out via email and by hard copy mail, and we have about 3,500 active business active licenses in the city at any given time.
Councilmember Pelosi.
So $50, we haven't raised it, I guess, raised it since 2003?
Correct.
Why not? Why not?
Well, if you remember, we chose not to
For?
during the
Councilmember
recession.
Wagner.
As I recall, the reason was we want to get everybody to sign up, because
demographics.
the main reason for business license when we first put it in was just to know who's out there. Now we've taken and used it as a hammer to get things done, but the original thought was we just want to know who's out there.
Councilmember Trout Manuel.
How many are in compliance?
So there's 2 ways to look at that. One is there's how many have a license and how many are good about renewing it, because that number is very easy for us to identify. And at the end of a year, and really we don't start doing hardcore outreach until maybe February, March. But at the end of a single year, you usually have about 200 or so that haven't renewed of the 3,500. So we start making phone calls. Our business is not to interrupt their business, so we have no interest in taking a harsh approach on those businesses. It's a harder question to answer what businesses exist out there that have never obtained a license, because those end up getting, at times we'll learn about them through fire inspection, or someone might call in and ask a question about that license. So we pick at those as they come in. And again, it's about educating them and saying you need this. Typically, business licenses aren't really very difficult to obtain. So, you know, it's not like we go out and say you need to shut down until you get it. We work with them through that. But that number is really hard to know because it's an unknown.
Do you require Avon and Mary Kay and those type of businesses?
Not unless they're using their home for an office, which most of them are. And again, it's knowing who they are. So there are a lot of them out there, I'm sure, that we don't know about. But if we find out about them, then we get them into compliance.
I will say that if I could just respond to a question or a comment that Councilmember Wagner made, it'd be disingenuous for me to say that we've never used the business license code to kind of get at other elements of activity occurring on a property. But it is still primarily the core of the program is registration and collection of information and understanding our industry profiles that are out there in the community. That is the real core of the program. It remains to this day.
Councilmember DeCoursey and then Councilmember Holman.
So Jeff, you mentioned fire inspections, so I would imagine that when Valley Regional Fire Authority goes out and does mainly their commercial inspections, they check for business licenses. Do they report to you if they do not find or if the business is not in compliance?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, they do.
One of the things that we collectively as a council did was set 3 goals, 3 5-year goals for us, and one of them is to increase the number of living wage jobs, increase prosperity in Auburn. One of the ways we look at this is through the fact that we ask the business license holders how many employees, and then we put it down as to what industry code. So it gives us a rough economic development look at ourselves. We only started collecting number of employees on our business license applications 5 years ago, 4 years ago?
Yeah. I was going to say, it's been diligent in the last 5 years. Excuse me. Prior to that, it was on there, but we didn't really enforce it as much.
Okay.
So.
But in the last couple of years, we're beginning to see a trend, and it's one way we grade and measure ourselves on what we're doing is good.
Yeah.
Mayor Banks.
One of the things some of you have probably heard from Doug Lean is that we are developing an opportunity for all of these business license owners to have access to a database so they can shop local themselves. And so instead of having the philosophy that we are going to charge you to be here, we are kind of looking at this as more of a membership, and here's what you're getting for your membership as a business in the city of Auburn. And it's really a good idea, I think, and one that Doug has really been active with, and I know Jeff and Darcy as well, to try and get that database built so that it can be operational for our local businesses.
You know, if you look forward in the document, and I know you haven't gotten to it, but you look at the rates that some of the other cities and whatever are charging, we're within $10 or so of it. And even though we haven't adjusted it since 2003, if we were to adjust it, we wouldn't recoup much money, and it would be counter to the economic development stuff that we as a city and Doug Lean are trying to do with our indexing and stuff.
If you want, we can just skip to that
Okay.
slide.
Right.
And when we went through and looked at the comparisons, thought it was appropriate to provide not only a little bit of information about business license fees, but also just in terms of business-friendly environment within a municipality, a little bit of information about business and occupation taxes. It's kind of dense in there. I mean, I tell you, I have to stare at that stuff for quite a while to kind of figure out the math on some of that. But you'll see that, Sumner and Covington, Auburn, I mean, we're kind of all right in the same wheelhouse there. Federal Way does not charge a business license tax, but they do have a per capita fee that they charge for their licenses. Kent does that, but they also have a business and occupation tax. And in the parentheses, wherever there's a B&O tax, I'm trying to do a little bit of math to give a sense of what that might look like on an annual basis for paying business and occupation taxes.
Well, and I know that that gives Kent a pretty bad reputation, is that they have the business and occupational tax and we don't, and with the $50 license fee, which is really obviously not covering our processing, we're seen as a more friendly place for business. Yeah.
And on that point, it's not in the slide, but I thought a good visual aid is the City of Auburn business license code is 2 pages, double-sided. Kent is 64 pages.
You aren't suggesting that we have an ad hoc look at that 2 pages?
I'm not. Burien is 40 pages.
Yeah.
Federal Way is 10 pages. To me, that's telling. I mean, I can't claim to be an expert on what the words are in those, but more pages usually does not equal simplicity. So, are there any questions on the comparison? I don't want to move past that since there's a lot in that slide. But the remaining 3 slides really touch on that compliance and authority, philosophy, things of that nature. Yeah, we've got all the language we need in terms of going out and talking to a business about needing a business license. We just fast forward past that because there's no point in talking about that. It's not nobody feels good in those moments. So it's really about that outreach. So that 3rd bullet point on that slide, that we've had very few interruptions of business due to business license enforcement. We've had some that we've, you know, when we have a massage license business in the city of Auburn that is not properly licensed by the state, and we can't verify the credentials of the folks that are working in there, we use business licensing. It's a way, it's an angle into an activity that may not be something that we want in Auburn. So there are those times where we use it.
Well, you say that we have 3,500 and about 200 of them may have some issues where they may be slightly delinquent. And we use our code enforcement people to, who do we use to go out and share with them that they may be delinquent?
What we do, first of all, is we have folks in the office just make a friendly call. We're not going out and trying to knock on the door and with, you know, authority. You know, that's not what we're trying to emphasize. So we make the calls and say, hey, you know, we haven't seen your renewal come in, just checking in on it. You know, also that list whittles down.
People forget.
Yeah.
Well, and a lot of businesses move or leave Auburn and they forget to call and tell us, and so that's how we weed some of those out.
But I'll tell you that one of the things that we find effective is not sending code enforcement out, but it's talking to economic development and figuring out friendlier ways to go out and say hi and introduce. And, you know, I mean, it doesn't need to be heavy-handed.
Councilmember Wagner.
As you keep this in the archives, I'd encourage you to capture the original reason and still the reason of why we do this, is we want to know who's out there.
Yeah.
And what they like. That's the main reason, and that's why we're $50, so that we can get everybody to. So anyway, if you could document that some way, we won't have a question like Bill's 10 years from now again.
One maybe last piece to touch on is we haven't really talked so much about rentals. We have used the business license program in a very positive way to build a better network of multifamily and rental property owners through the city. So working with police and property managers to really formulate training and a network to improve conditions out on property and reduce crime. And it's been great. We've had a lot of consultations with code enforcement and police, and you know, police already puts on a crime prevention training for multifamily property owners. It's held 4 times a year. Code enforcement gets to participate in that. The SAFER program, Safe Auburn for Every Resident, We've had a number of folks enroll in this program where they can put a window cling on and market their property as being really for their tenancy to say, we're doing things as property managers to make this property safe, or make our community safe. So that's been very rewarding. The network right now of everyone who's gone through the training and the program is over 200 properties right now. And there's about 400 multifamily properties in Auburn. So in about a year and a half, we've been able to make a strong connection with half of those multifamily properties and continue to work towards the rest as well.
When we work with this Safer Auburn, and you look at the housing standards, you're dealing with fire detectors, sprinklers, and lead-free
Yeah.
paint?
Absolutely. What the offer is, and of course it takes some time to build some trust.
Yeah.
But what the offer is we'll go out and do an inspection of their property. Now that may not sound like something that everybody's just going to say, yeah, let's get the city or the government out on my property doing inspections. But with the right approach and with the right kind of marketing where you can label your property as a safer endorsed property, folks are really welcoming to say, walk it and tell me where you think that there's something vulnerable on the property. And, you know, a handrail or stairway that's not quite right, fire extinguishers are great. So it's been really a positive experience so far.
Councilmember DeCoursey.
So, Jeff, how do we inform owners of single-family homes who maybe want to rent their homes out, they need a business license, and they may not know they need a business license?
Yeah, that's tough because I'll tell you this, we're not doing data scouring in the office trying to find every one of these properties. So they generally come to our attention through a neighbor that complains. Maybe there's a high level of police response to a property, could come about that way. Or sometimes there's an incident, a fire, something like that. We just had one, you know, not so many days ago.
Yeah.
And so those types of things come to our attention in a variety of ways. We're not unique in that we require a rental or a license to rent a single-family residence, but it's something that is not the first thing that a property owner would think of. So, yeah, I mean, we have gotten the word out a little bit. I mean, there have been occasions where we can put that into some literature that goes out, and we've taken advantage of some of those opportunities. Sometimes through your utility department that a property owner owns a property, but a different person is paying the utility bill. So, we can use those opportunities as educational, again, just to let people know. And then the last slide, I'm running long on time here, so sorry. Last slide just gives you a little bit of statistical information about, the interactions that we've had over the last few years and the kind of volume that we deal with. And it's not huge in terms of the overall number of interactions that we have, but for compliance matters. But you'll see that each year, and whether it's commercial or rental, and you'll see some explanations as to why there's a spike in some of the rental interactions. And so hopefully that helps. But like I bolded in red, very few of these interactions lead to a code enforcement type of situation. They're just interactions, information.
Councilmember Pelosi.
The code enforcement is in your department, right?
Correct.
Do we have enough code enforcement officers to do the job?
We're in a very good position with code enforcement. They're very busy, so we have 3 of them. Council is gracious to grant a 3rd code enforcement officer 2 years ago. And that's been very effective. Recall that our goal was to get out and educate and do more education and outreach rather than just react. So 2 of the code enforcement officers focus entirely on response to complaints that come in, and then the 3rd code enforcement officer is working on the SAFER program and getting out and meeting business owners and working from an education point of view. Their plates are full, but I am thankful for what I guess I would call the number of code enforcement officers relative to our population, we're in a good place.
I know that up on Forest Ridge, they've done a lot of work up there with the community, and you can see it in the neighborhood. And people really appreciate the staff up there, really do. But you can see a difference in just the time you guys have spent up there. So thank you.
Thanks for that.
Yeah. Councilmember Pelosa.
So you have a backlog on code enforcement requests?
So there's two parts to that. It seems like I say that a lot. There's the part about responding. You call and we answer, get an email or whatever. We respond to a property within 48 hours of receiving a complaint. So that we stay on top of. Now then, the code enforcement officer has the ability to utilize a little discretion on the severity of the complaint. So I would say there's no backlog. We're meeting the customer service objective of responding and getting out within the 48 hours of receiving the inquiry or the email. There's probably 5 different ways you can submit a complaint. So we get to that very quickly. And, some issues we're dealing with, within hours we want it corrected, depending upon what it is. Sometimes people might need 2 weeks to get their situation corrected, and the code gives us that discretion to work with a property owner to come up with the right plan of attack for that particular compliance issue.
Do you ever go out and just wander around the neighborhood looking for problems?
If you call and you're complaining because my grass is long or I've got a car parked in my front yard and the code enforcement officer comes out to look at my property but sees that 7 other people have their cars parked on their yard, they will approach all 7. So we don't want anyone to feel singled out. So there's that. And then when the comprehensive plan was adopted in 2015, did establish impression corridors in the city, highly traveled areas of the city, where appearance is important. So we do spend a little bit of time on those impression corridors if there's vegetation problems or sign clutter, things like that. And then we start working with those property owners to help just boost the appearance a little bit.
Can you
But
bring
that's
us
as
a
proactive
copy
as
of
we get.
those impression corridors?
Sure.
Great. I'd love to see that.
So do we do enough outreach for citizens that can help clean up neighborhoods using your Gov and the Auburn app? Do you have any interaction there?
I don't want to dodge that question. I actually would love to spend a half an hour talking about what we do. And maybe that would be an opportunity to come back to council and walk through all the things that we do from a proactive point of view.
I think that would be great.
Yes, I think Tammy could talk about how she brings in volunteer groups to help with some of our houses where there's elderly and they need some help. She's very resourceful.
Yeah,
And
she's
love.
amazing.
Yes. Yes.
And but yeah, there's a lot that's going on, and it goes in so many. There's so many different angles that are being taken, and it is appropriate, I'm sure, for us to take a time out, come to council, talk about all of those types of things, because there may be opportunities we're missing too that we would appreciate the suggestions.
I know I'm one of your lieutenants because when I see something out in the neighborhoods, I just stop, take a photo, send it to your Gov, and bang.
He trains people too.
Yeah,
He does.
well, that's good. We need that,
Well, it saves you time if you can go directly to an area that needs attention. You don't have to
Yeah.
drive around.
Right.
I'd like a copy of your high impact or.
Impression corridors, sure.
Yes, thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Councilmember Holman.
Less a question, more a statement. We hired the 3rd compliance code enforcement officer in 2015. And look up there at the statistics. 2015 to 2016, interactions have more than doubled. So we're getting good bang for our buck.
And that's just for business licensing. Yeah.
Yep, she's keeping us on our toes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Thanks for
much.
joining us.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
We're going to take a 8-minute break, and then we are going to have Rob join us.
I gotta stand up.
Of course I will.
Only close yours. What's that? I didn't want him to log out.
20 minutes, Jeff. 20 minutes, Jeff.
And I know you, people call in and.
And I told them too, I said, I gave them all and asked them for license, so I'll cut the crap out of you. It's fine. I know, it's fine.
It's a hard exam.
Yeah.
You did well. And just try under talking points.
I was thinking of.
No, not
okay.
I mean, this is my golf course video.
Well, we call it welfare check. Check the welfare.
Did he?
And so, sometimes they're suspicious, so they're realize.
I'm on it, I'll put it on the golf course page. I'm not experienced.
We talked about cleaning up a couple of the, not his schools, but actual shots we got.
Yeah. Oh, and if you get out there and get the fall colors, oh my gosh, that place just explodes. I love it.
Yep, there's, you ever bring that,
Aerials you too, the people that have just seen the video, that has those drone shots too, and you just see all that greenery and it's so lush, people are like,
the subject of the mental health.
yeah, exactly. You got it playing on a loop and the digital display up in the mayor's office.
Do you really?
And then Jason can play videos, just throw the 30-second spot in
I'm
there,
surprised she
so
hasn't
that even without sound.
put some sort of sign on her door like movie star, do not disturb.
Autographs 10:30.
Yeah.
I only have the red Indians, please.
Yeah. Well, good, I'm glad that's done. It's off everybody's plate.
Oh, we saw 3 other people.
Who's that?
Scott, good IT.
Do you have somebody in the key department, so multimedia, PD, public works planning, you guys? Oh, there you go. Okay.
The greens, yes.
Yeah.
The greens are being
No.
rolled.
I think you got the key there.
Sure, so if we needed some sort of. Yeah. Yeah.
Apparently,
Good, our work.
didn't want to roll.
It's exciting that at
It
point now.
is a good.
Sign stealing.
It's kind of leveled off a little bit.
Is this a bird?
Oh, yeah. But they're not just knocking them down, they're actually taking them.
Bob told
They're
me I
pellets.
have to use your camera.
We've got photographs of
That's right.
some of these people, just this becomes, so we've got
That's right.
photographs of the car. And, yeah.
It's such an exciting, okay, sure.
His Vance's supporters stole a lot of money.
You guys ever go to the picnic?
Once in a while.
Yeah, there's some of that.
Does it show that way for you?
Way more than I shared.
No, it's also, you know, building stages here. I called Linda Cowan.
I'll be splitting it with somebody else.
And if it's a crisis, then put it
Commission. I get some sympathy for them.
So I count.
Partially on different cases to different locations, so that makes some sense of why this may be 4,000 for us compared to everybody else.
And then when you take into consideration what we're doing for SD3, we have a direct benefit. Okay?
Hey, Virginia, did you ever meet Claude?
Okay, and you look at that. People are pissed.
Borrowing that together.
Real pissed. I mean, they're and then you take,
That's a mental health issue, I better watch it.
They're careful, that's right.
Could end up in
ST3.
I haven't gotten some of this stuff.
It's not part of it.
Yeah.
They still
Step in at some point.
So you make sure it gets the right wording.
He's had a couple of big cases, some didn't go so well beforehand.
You know, with the 7 school, it doesn't help.
Bring in the F-16 for
It's not all, you know, government, I mean, it's schools too.
But isn't that rebuilds that sound like Washington?
Oh, I saw the preview.
2 or 3 new ones.
Yeah, you got body parts all
There's
over.
places like Washington that
Well,
have that
the
circle kind of.
park and
Somebody had to get on the turn to the back of the theater just for.
everything's back to the one Cascade over at Tom School. He's building it on the football field.
Bill Warren.
The first
Memorial Building, Bill Warren. He was.
I did too.
He made 7 Iowa invasions as an army front.
They played games.
He saw
Always what if you get, and the announcement is that if you had 20,000 people off the votes, then you were doing a bond for 20,000 to replace that. That was the replacement. So your staff, this was replacement.
Get it out and start flipping through it. Start taking out the clip.
About out
in the
there.
chamber, I know.
The superintendent, see, he doesn't have
in those days, we had cavalry.
what we're
Yeah,
used to in our
horses.
schools when it comes to
So
communication.
there's a guy out there.
Yeah.
We got your letter.
Yeah, see, and that's not the Fugit, Kim Parent, Lynn Cowan way. No, no.
They would go out and probably knock on his door and try
Or
and
they would have been there before him. Yeah. They would have had committee meetings for 2 years to cite the school, you know, on and on and on and on. Yeah. So,
Well, you know, I would have voted for a smaller
Like that, oh.
It's like ST3,
I had a
too
couple.
big.
well,
In
that's
fact, they
why.
do read in the paper that most of the
But it is,
legislators
I know
thought
the
they were
people
authorizing a team.
sat there.
Well,
Most of the legislators were that far off.
and the reason why I voted against it was because sometimes you haven't. Yeah,
Start shaking.
and that school one was not real.
She knew a lot more than I did. My uncle was really.
So what do you think of our street up there? Isn't that nice to ride on that?
Oh, yeah.
Almost completed.
Except we still gotta work around all the traffic revisions, but that won't be too much of a ball.
No, once they close up, it's nice to drive on it. It looks like people are pretty happy.
It looks nice.
In fact, he got,
Nice.
They must have one more left to do on the pavement, because the
Yeah, there's still a
concrete is
little
so.
lip there.
Yeah.
Going like that.
You know, Virginia, if you weren't talking so much, Virginia, we'd get our meeting started.
Not my fault.
Get the gavel, kid.
Knock, knock, knock. Okay, it is 4 minutes after 7, and we are going to get started with Rob. And Rob's going to talk to us for 30 minutes.
Bob's already told me I am not allowed to use those 30 minutes.
Who told you that?
Chief Lee, and he's armed.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, he's
Thank you
left
very
and
much.
right.
That's right, that's right.
How much
Left and
time
right.
did you give him?
I'll say 10.
No wonder you're our favorite police chief. Only good news and in 10 minutes.
Okay, there you go.
Thank
I
you.
got the enviable task of talking about insurance. So I wanted to give you an update on a couple of our programs. First one being the workers' compensation program. As you may remember, the city elected to go self-insured for workers' compensation. Workers' compensation covers employee injuries on the job. So it is separate from medical coverage. It's a no-fault system. In Washington State, you can either self-insure or be insured with the Department of Labor and Industries. We decided to go give it a shot and self-insure, and I'd like to report so far, things are going pretty well. As of the end of 2016, I gave you an update, the revenue. This is the charge that the city collects from payroll. We have a worker hour rate that we charge ourselves and collect to pay for the medical and the other expenses listed down below. Last year, we funded to close to $875,000. 2017, we're projected to come in right around $920,000, depending upon our worker hours at the end of the year. We've used an actuary to kind of set our rates as to where we think we need to be funding to. Right now, we're trying to hit the 85% confidence level. That means 85% of the time, we should have enough money to fund our debts and liabilities. Now, if you looked at that from a plane perspective, how comfortable would you be 85% of the time knowing that that plane's going to land? But from a fiscal perspective, it's pretty conservative. Nice thing about at the end of 2016, you can see our ending reserves were close to $1 million. Now, that is not savings, that is reserves, because we still have to pay for ongoing claims. Even if the city were to cease operating at the end of 2016, there's a run-out phase. So those claims still remain open. So that's not $1 million that we have to go spend elsewhere. It's $1 million set aside to help pay for those claims that may remain open after that time period. You can see, though, compared to the state fund, we've done pretty well in saving ourselves some money. One, we're paying ourselves in the reserves, so hopefully we don't even expend all those reserves, so we have a little bit extra money to help offset future increases. But two, we've also funded at a lower rate than what we would have been paying had we remained with the state from an L&I perspective, to the tune of close to $300,000, $294,000. So that's just compared to where we would have been had we remained with the state. Next, page 2 is just kind of a graphical representation of that data. So I don't know if there's any specific questions
Can
regarding.
you call out the bottom page numbers so that, as you go?
Oh, certainly. I don't have your.
19.
Okay, is 19 the start?
This one is 19.
Perfect. All right, I'm good from there. Nope, that should be okay. So on page 19, that's just that graphical representation. The lower graph is comparing the city's expenses with what we would have paid had we remained with the state. So the blue would have been the state L&I premium. The red is what we're paying ourselves in the expenses, not necessarily what we're collecting in total revenue because of the reserves. Those are set aside for future claims. Then on page 20, oh, go ahead.
Councilmember Holman.
You have a trend line that's increasing. Will they eventually meet?
Hopefully not. If you notice above, you could see how it's gradually gone up because there's what's called a run-in phase when we went self-insured. When we went in 2014, we had kind of a blank slate. So we only started paying for those claims from that point on. So all the open claims from 2013 on remained with the State Department of Labor and Industries. So there will be a gradual increase. Hopefully we do see some leveling out, but unfortunately with claims and medical costs, they only tend to increase. So while our frequency numbers stay relatively the same, we average right around 40 claims a year. The costs tend to only increase due to the cost of medical and providing the medical as well as wages if we have someone that's on what's called a time loss compensation system, where we have to pay their wage replacement.
Councilmember Pelosi?
Do you have an aging claim list?
An aging claim list, what do you mean by that?
Well, a claim comes in.
Yes. How long it stays open? Well, I will tell you this, one of the benefits of going self-insured is our claims are significantly closed a lot quicker than they were when we remained with the state L&I system.
Okay, but.
So we can get you an average
Yeah.
time period in which a claim may remain open.
Yeah, we'd like to see, I think it's good information. Thank
Sure.
you.
Councilmember DeCoursey.
So, Rob, I'm not sure if we, and you probably know this, but if we have an average age of employees, so let's say, for example, our maintenance employees, typically as we get older, we're more prone and susceptible to injuries. Has there been any projection going forward of what that might look like as we continue to age in the workforce population?
Luckily, we have, like I said, had a relatively stable amount of claims. They haven't fluctuated year to year. They've been right around the 40 claims on average, with police being by far the largest department due to the nature of police work. And I haven't seen really any correlation with the aging workforce because the dynamic nature of police, a lot of them get injured, hate to say this, Chief, but during defensive tactics training, where they're going hands-on, and next thing you know, you have a rotator cuff injury, or you have a knee problem, or a strain or a sprain. Unfortunately, or they're out in the field in a dynamic environment, sometimes at night with limited visibility, and sometimes a suspect may resist, which tends to cause some injuries. So that tends to be our frequent claim filed would be in the police department. Maintenance, second, but very low as far as an experience goes. I mean, we probably average maybe 5 claims out of the, yeah, it has. We have a very good safety and health program with our supervisors taking the lead in that and communicating that to the staff. And I will say we are very concerned in making sure that we limit our injuries and wear the PPE and do the job safely when we can. Yes. Next then on page 20, if there's any other questions on workers' comp. Wanted to talk briefly about the liability program. We are a member of Washington City's Insurance Authority, WCIA. They're a municipal insurance pool, and they provide the city's property and liability insurance. We have a 0 deductible for liability and a $5,000 deductible on property and auto physical damage. So when we have or if we were to have a fire at the golf course or smoke damage, that would be subject to a $5,000 deductible, and then anything above that would be reimbursed through WCIA. If we have an auto accident where we run into a tree or someone were to hit us and we couldn't collect the money from an at-fault party, the damage to our vehicles up to $5,000 is on the city. Above that would be covered by WCIA. Liability is if we were to damage someone else and be legally responsible for that, that has a 0 deductible. We have $20 million in liability coverage depending upon the line item. Some items are reduced down to $10 million, but for the most part, general liability is a $20 million policy. WCIA is a municipal insurance pool, so we do share our risks with other members, other municipalities throughout the state of Washington. I kind of gave you a comparison as to how the city is doing compared to other Group 4 cities. What WCIA does is they put their members into what's called actuarial groups based upon the number of worker hours they report. City of Auburn is in actuarial Group 4. We are the largest group that reports over 400,000 worker hours. So we are compared to cities such as, I do have a list here, Bothell, Issaquah, Kennewick, Kirkland, Lacey, Marysville, Longview, Lakewood, Mercer Island, Mount Vernon, Olympia, Puyallup, Walla Walla, just to give you an example, Tukwila. Those are similar sized cities that are in our actuarial group. And what the chart on 20 shows, or the table down below, shows the overall losses for the group, our expected total. The expected total is based upon our reported worker hours. Since we're 7.1% of the worker hours, they expect us to have 7.1% of the losses, kind of like a pie. You got to divide it up. And they figure since we're this large, we should have this many or this percentage of the losses. Now, looking at the claim type, you can see auto liability, definitely an issue. This is one area where we exceed the average. I will say we are probably one of the largest Group 4 cities as well when it comes to the worker hours that are being reported. I'd like to say we could do better, and we could, but we also spend a lot of time in our vehicles and police vehicles in particular, and we've had some claims as a result of that. We have been aggressively working on training and reviewing all accidents as they come in and look at the causes and try and put some controls in place to prevent future, and we, as well as education. We're constantly doing some training on that.
Councilmember Pelosi?
Rob, can you give us the example for errors and omissions?
Yes, errors and omissions tends to revolve around development review, such as certain businesses not being happy with either zoning or compliance. There's one in particular revolving around a new industry in Washington State that tends to kind of escalate in some litigation, and we had some defense costs. The total incurred is a combination of possible indemnity payments to third parties as well as costs to defend the claims as they come in if they result in litigation or a lawsuit. That's where we then have to have defense costs to help defend the city.
How does that compare with, oh, okay, so this is from 2012 through 2016.
This is a 5-year period. The actuaries look at a 5-year period when they do their rate assessments, so it's good to kind of have that snapshot. I will say from a general liability perspective, doing very well, and I'd like to point out public safety as well, because this is an area that, just by the nature of policing, especially in today's environment, it is very difficult to keep those numbers down. And I think this is a real testament to the department, the chief. I think we have the best department in the state and one of the best chief and police forces around, going all the way through patrol. I mean, they really, to have $229,000, when you look at what we should have, or expected total, is over $1 million. And to have that low is really almost 1 or 2 claims, because defense costs alone can be anywhere upwards of 6 figures if you get into litigation.
Well, I have to say, I feel that we are very good on errors and omissions.
Not bad.
Because I feel that the staff has always informed us during executive sessions of those kinds of issues, and we've all really felt that these were things that we needed to take on, and I don't think that so I think we need to give the attorney's department a pat on the back besides the police chief.
I think every department, to be honest with you.
Well, I'm not gonna argue.
General liability alone too, to have only 439,000. General liability primarily, you see a lot of sewer backups, water main breaks, sidewalk, streets, roads. So again, 439,000 for the city this size is doing very well compared to our peers, and that helps in checks we don't write in reduced premiums for the, or reduced assessments for the city. Then on page 21, it kind of breaks it down by the different departments. And you can see in a little bit more detail kind of where we've had some claims and where they spread out. Police is a little higher on this page than it is on the other because this is inclusive of the auto liability. So on the chart before, police was a little bit lower because auto was broken out above. Here, it's inclusive of auto liability as well as some of the other areas that they may face.
Can you tell us a little bit about development review?
Sure, the development review, like I said, that can, the 94,000 with our losses is a 5-year period. In particular, I think we had, the bulk of that's really 1 to 2 claims centered around some business with some litigation.
Okay, got it. Okay.
That has since closed, so that's the good news, is that one has closed, so we don't expect to incur any more in regards to that.
Oh, yes, Councilmember Pelosi.
How about, can you explain Public Works streets down at the bottom?
I can.
Potholes.
284,000.
Well, potholes is the most frequently filed claim we receive. We don't pay on potholes because we have a pothole patrol and we're aggressively out there filling those. The city's not liable for a dangerous condition we did not create unless we have knowledge about that and a chance to fix it. So, I've done this before. But we do have and incur sidewalk claims, trips and falls sometimes where we have notice about an issue and we fail to correct it in a timely manner. Road design as well can be very costly to defend, even though we may not have done anything wrong. Sometimes you have some high injuries that may drive litigation.
It could be because of the contractor out there, right?
Contractor claims tend to get tendered off through the contracts that we have in place with insurance. That's why we require insurance on our contractors so that they can pay for those claims if they incur something themselves. But this is more associated with the city infrastructure and the city operations. Then on page 22, just kind of shows a total incurred for the city over a number of years. I like to include a trend line there going down, although I will be honest, it is somewhat misleading because claimants do have 3 years to file a claim for damages and they frequently will wait those 3 years. So the 16-15, although 14 is a little bit high, that's more mature. So we don't expect that to grow much larger. The 15 and 16 probably will as claims mature and you get closer to the statute of limitations where they then start to file those claims. Hopefully they don't grow too high. Then on page 23, I want to give you a brief update. We changed medical carriers a couple years back. We switched from AWC to Primera. And we did so for a number of reasons, primarily with the Affordable Care Act coming in line. There was a excise tax that we're going to be charged that has since been delayed a little bit further, but our current provider was stopping the coverage that went into effect as of 1/1/18, coupled with the fact that we never had access to our data, so it limited our ability to market ourselves. Now I'll go over the be careful what you wish for scenario later, but just kind of want to talk about it's been very beneficial, though, so far with the change. We've seen a significant savings in our overall costs without a decrease in benefits to the employees. One of the difficult parts leaving AWC is we had to find coverage for our Left 1 retirees. As you may know, Left 1 retirees are law enforcement firefighters that we are responsible to pay for their medical coverage in retirement. So we had coverage with AWC. It was very difficult to place. We did find some coverage with our broker, Brown & Brown, with the Hartford Group Medical and Supplement, and that has saved us some money as well. And we also changed, the city offers a VEBA plan, which is a voluntary employment benefit plan, it's like a health savings account for employees that we contribute to. We changed providers, didn't save the city any money because it's primarily employee-driven, but we did reduce our overall administrative costs from 1.25 basis points down to 35 basis points to the participants, which resulted in close to about a $71,000 savings for the plan participants overall. So that was nice. But with the medical coverage, you can see on page 24, we kind of broke out where our premiums were with AWC to where they went to with Primera. And in 2016, we would have paid the $5,310,000. We paid the $4.6 million, resulting in a $682,000 savings, or 12.85%. Then in 2017, we would have had to pay $5.5 million, or close to $5.5 million. Instead, we paid the $5.2 million, which resulted in, again, about a $276,000 savings, as well as we saved with our left one retirees, which overall we saved over $1 million. Now, that's also checks we didn't write, so it's not necessarily a savings per se, it's just we didn't have to spend that money for those same type of benefits, so.
Councilmember Pelosi.
Rob, I have a question about city employee medical plan.
Sure.
How does our plan compare to other cities in our area, like Renton, Tukwila, Des Moines, Kent, Covington, Enumclaw?
Sure.
I'm interested in knowing how much an employee pays into the medical plan, and are we competitive with other cities on what they're doing?
Definitely. That's one of the things we always have to look at, especially with collective bargaining agreements, with the police and our union contracts.
And I'm not asking anything that might be.
Understood. It's always difficult, though, sometimes to make comparisons to different medical plans because it's hard to get into the different deductibles, co-pays. So you don't always have an apples-to-apples plan, i.e. Renton, Kent, they're self-insured. So they have their own self-insured plan. But I can tell you a lot of other similar cities are on the AWC plan and offer the AWC medical program, which is what we were on.
Right.
So we kept a very similar plan to the AWC plan and offered very similar benefits to that with out-of-pocket deductibles, maximum family limits as to what an employee would have to pay, max out-of-pocket, as well as co-pays when they go see a physician, and a similar doctor network. As far as co-pays, we pay 100% for the employee and 10% for dependents, and that is very similar to what other cities are offering their employees because we're recruiting from the same applicant pool. So it's something that we're always trying to be cognizant of and making sure that we have a good benefit package to make sure we attract good employees and retain good employees and don't lose them to the surrounding cities.
So we pay 100% of the
Employee premium.
employee's medical plan. Does that include dental too?
Dental, we do pay 100% for the employee as well and 90% for dependents. So if you have just a single employee, the city would pay the premium for that. If you have a wife, then you have a charge for the wife up to 10%. The city would pay 90%, the employee pays 10%. And so on with dependents up to a full family, which would be a wife and 2 dependents.
Claude, is King County similar to that?
Well, again, remember, I worked with the King County Housing Authority, which is not part of county government.
Oh, that's
But
true.
for the first 10 years I was there, it was 100% paid, and then our premiums kept escalating. And the Housing Authority decided to have a shared program, and when I left, we were paying about 15%, and the Housing Authority is paying about 85%, so this is a tremendous plan for employees in the city.
And part of what we've been able to do is because we did change the plan, we recently created that 10%. I think it was about 4 years ago, we started doing the cost sharing because of the increases that were coming along with the healthcare. We negotiated that, and then by changing the plans, we've been being able to keep the premiums relatively stable the best we can, or reduce them compared to what we would have paid had we remained with AWC.
Thank you.
So then on page 25, or the last page, is the careful what you wish for. Remember when I said we didn't have our experience rating? Now we do. And we know whether we are a good risk or a bad risk from a health insurance perspective. And I will say we are a frequent user. We are running roughly at 97.93%. Which is pretty high from an insurance industry perspective. They'd like to see that ratio down below 80%. So unfortunately, we've had some pretty high claims. We hope that over the long term, those will start to balance out and come down. We do anticipate, though, because of that, we will expect about a 10 to 15% increase for renewal. We don't renew until October, so that's when we should get more set indicators as to what we're going to be paying for next year.
Councilmember Pelosi, now he has already gone 25 minutes, and he said he would get this into 10.
Sorry, Chief.
Let's not make this a Councilmember
Okay.
Wagner question.
No.
Okay.
This is the column fourth from the right, pooled claims over 120K.
Sure.
Can you explain that?
Yes, our Primera carrier reinsures claims that are above 120,000, so they do not count that additional monies against us when they're looking at the renewals. So that's just kind of marked over on the side just to show where we're actually at, but they don't look at that when they're looking at our total renewals. They're only going to look at the claims below that amount. So anything above, so you see the net, you have total claims, pooled claims over, and the net claims. The net claims is them reducing down the total as to what we actually get charged against.
Councilmember Holman and then Councilmember DeCoursey.
Loss ratio.
My experience with most loss prevention specialists has been that they manage insurance accounts. And you have come to Auburn and started managing the actual risk and have lowered it. And so I thank you for that proactive mentality, because it allows us to save, by this presentation, a whole heap of money. And so now maybe we can start through Healthy Auburn and some other initiatives, start attacking our medical bills just as aggressively as we have accidents.
Councilmember DeCoursey.
Rob, on the workers' comp portion, we're self-insured now in that. Do you still calculate experience modification factor internally?
No, we don't, because that is more of a rating actuarial perspective to punish or be favorable to those that have a below average claim history. We don't, we just have the actuary. They kind of factor in credibility weighting in their claims that they've incurred. So the more claims you have based upon the standard industrial code, we still use the SIC codes attached to the jobs for a hourly rate charge. So they kind of look at it, but it's not as prevalent as the mod factor that the state would use.
Councilmember Pelosi.
So at the graph on page 25, the one bottom one.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at October 16, our net paid claims has been creeping up to now March of 17. Our claims are so what's all that about?
What this shows is each month, the paid premiums versus the medical bills that our health insurer paid out for that month. So the premiums are gonna stay relatively flat depending upon our employee base and the dependents. It will fluctuate because we add and have staff turnover accordingly. But the claims being paid out are going to be what the employee or the dependents incurred either a month or two prior that we're now paying out a month or two later as bills come in. So that is just a month's reflective, or each month's reflection as to the loss ratio. And that, again, deducts or takes out the claims over the 120,000. That's just on the net paid claims versus the premium.
So how come we're lagging that far behind? March, and this is almost August.
It takes a while. We get quarterly updates, and actually we're meeting August 1st now. Is that tomorrow? No, next week, next Tuesday. Yeah. With them for an update. So I get quarterly updates from them. This was the last update I had for the presentation. And we don't get into specific medical conditions due to federal HIPAA requirements. So we just get the overall experience factor.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That 32 minutes was very, very enlightening, and I think you probably have talked chiefly.
In my defense, I did say 30, so I think I was somewhat.
Yes, shouldn't have asked that last question.
Okay, now I'm going to turn the meeting over to our chair of our Public Works and Community Development Focus Group.
Okay, and we're going to start with 4A, which is a private service line warranty program. That's page 26 of 83. And it's a National League of Cities endorsed program. The only question I've got is, what does endorse obligate us to do if we endorse it?
So what we wanted to do tonight is talk to you about what the program is. I know that some of you went to the AWC, and I know that they were there talking about the program as well. We wanted to go through, so we've been looking at it for several months and kind of trying to get to the heart of your question is, what does it mean for the city if we were to try to do this? And what are some of the concerns or questions that we might have? So what we have for you tonight is to walk through kind of what the program does and what we see as what the city's requirements would be to sign on with them, and then what the city staff recommendations are for how we maybe move forward. Hold on just a second.
So this is just a slide that shows where the areas of responsibility are. So a customer property owner is responsible for taking care of the side sewer and the water service line that's on their property, whereas the city, under current city code, is responsible for anything that is in the right-of-way. So from the water meter to the main and the rest of the side sewer that connects to the main. Typically, a homeowner's insurance policy doesn't include repairs of that kind, so that's an out-of-pocket expense for the property owners. In Auburn, typically those kinds of repairs for sewer run $4,000 to $8,000, and for a water repair can run $2,000 to $6,000. Based on the permits that that are taken out to do those kinds of repairs, we estimate that about 40 property owners per year have to repair their side sewer, and about 30 water service line repairs occur. So the National League of Cities, as you've probably heard, has partnered with Utility Service Partners to promote a nationwide program. They have 400 cities in 37 states that have partnered with the USP, the Utility Service Partners on the service line warranty program. What that program does is it repairs the homeowner's external water and sewer lines with no cost to the city, who is supporting that program, and the cities can also receive a royalty for each customer who signs up for the program. The program is voluntary. The individual property owners can sign up for it. There's no pressure to do that. There's no minimum number of customers that are required. USP has told us that after about 3 years, on average, about 30% of the property owners have participated in the program. So it's by no means across the board throughout the city, but that's a pretty decent number. And they enter into a contract with the city that includes an indemnification clause. The program covers up to $8,500 per incident. If there's any costs that are in excess of that, the homeowner would reimburse the company. It includes work in the public streets and sidewalk. The typical homeowner participation cost, again, no contract is required, but they would pay about $8 a month if they chose to warranty their sewer facilities, and about $6 a month for water. So if they chose both of those, about $14 a month. They can call a toll-free number anytime, day or night, throughout the year. And the repairs are made by licensed local contractors. So one of the big things that the program promotes is that they're employing local business people and keeping the work in the community.
Councilmember,
Okay, I have a question. Is that $14 on top of our regular monthly fee?
Yes, this would be
this would
be an arrangement between the warranty program and the property owner. The city would not be a party to that contract between them.
Correct, so it would not show up on a water utility billing or sewer billing
So
from the city. This
that
is a
check
separate.
would go straight to that entity?
Correct.
Okay.
You'd sign an agreement with them.
Okay.
There's no lifetime limits, deductibles, service fees, or paperwork. The company takes care of all of that. And they also do a public education program, so educating the customers on how to take good care of their lines and also where their responsibility lies versus the city. I included in your packet, because this is really small and hard to read, an example of the type of marketing materials that the company would send out. The city's logo would be prominently displayed at the top, and it would be a letter ostensibly from the city to the property owners describing the program and encouraging them to review the materials, and if they chose to sign up for it, to contact the company and fill that out. Only single-family customers are eligible. They don't market to commercial businesses. And they would ask that either the addresses be supplied by the city from the city's billing system, or they can use a mass marketing company to generate those addresses for the marketing materials that would be mailed out, on average about 6 times a year. So the staff from finance, legal, risk management, and public works have gotten together to talk about the program and evaluate the program. We'd like to share some of our thoughts with you before you get into a deliberation about this. The marketing materials we feel that would have Auburn's logo on it, we think might cause some confusion on the part of our customers about whether or not this is really an Auburn-sponsored program. We feel that because of that, we might see an increase in the number of claims for things that really aren't the city's responsibility. By accepting a royalty payment from the company for each person that signs up, that may actually expose us to some liability, because we're taking in money for those members.
Yes, Lindsay.
I believe Kenmore is the only city in the state currently that has this program.
David Baker.
And Mayor Baker mentioned that the city does not accept the royalty, but puts it back into the customer's funding.
That is correct. That can be done. You can either accept it and then put it into a fund maybe to help disadvantaged property owners, or, as you say, decline the royalty, and then the customer's monthly payments are reduced by a commensurate amount. We also were reluctant to provide our customers billing information to a for-profit company for them to use for the mailings. The city endorsement of a company that we don't really have any control over their operations or their level of customer service, we feel that that might reflect poorly on the city if there were some issues between the company and their customers. It's a little bit unclear how the city would handle the issue where repairs happen in the right-of-way, since again, the city is responsible for those areas. And there are other companies and programs that are available, including companies here in Washington State that offer a similar type of program. And with that, we're happy to discuss.
Okay. This program has, in National League of Cities, been out, I think, around 6 years or so. And I brought it, I've mentioned it in some of my trips to National League of Cities. And the reason that I haven't pushed it was because the state of Washington insurance didn't authorize this program until recently, I think about 6 months ago. So, but I signed up with AARP, AARP, about a year ago. I didn't know where this was going and all that stuff. And I think the rates, I don't have my CFO with me tonight, but the rates I think are very similar. And but you know, we got a 1968 house, and you never know about water and sewer line. Well, of course, we're not on sewer, but water line would affect us. And but they would come and get AARP, a contractor would come and get permits from the city. We wouldn't have to do any of that. So, you know, that's how AARP works it. But I'm sure that this is probably, you know, just as good as AARP. I'm going to check the fees and compare them. Anyway, that's my side.
Other questions or comments?
Well, I echo what Councilmember Pelosi was saying. I tried to bring this to Auburn 5-6 years ago, at the beginning of my tenure, and was told that Washington wouldn't have it. I tried to get it independently and couldn't get it through AARP because age. I wasn't old enough 6 years ago. I am now in the target area. But this is an area of liability that I'm exposed to, so sign me up.
Yeah, I mean, this is a good program. I agree with staff's recommendations that we don't want to put liability on us. And I'm sure that they would work those out, because they would want our outreach to the city citizens, because it is a good program.
Have they sent us the actual legal boilerplate that tells how they indemnify us?
We've received a sample contract from them, and the contract is negotiable. It's not a take it or leave it type of contract.
Does it generally pay for legal expenses as well as claims, or do you have to negotiate that?
I think that has to be negotiated.
Because legal expenses can be just about as big as anything else. Well, I think it's worth looking more at. I'm not sure what, you guys are going to come back into another study session with a normal recommendation?
So I have a couple follow-up questions then, if this is something that council wants us to look for more into. Some of the staff's concerns, one is the use of the city's logo on their marketing materials.
Can you put up that slide again, please?
If we could maybe go through a couple of those and get a feel for, obviously not a vote, but at least some sort of consensus from the council.
Was this the one?
No, last one.
Under the concerns.
Oh, sorry.
The recommendations or the staff comments. There we go.
Yep.
So, you know, is that something we would want to consider as use of the city's logo on any of their marketing material?
I think it is confusing, like you say here. People will look at that and think that it's overly sanctioned, or that they can deal with all their conflicts and resolutions through us, and then we are caught in the middle.
Or that we have some liability or responsibility for the work on their property, which we don't want to get into that realm. That's where the staff's concern really is coming from.
How is the other city doing it? Could you get an example of theirs to see how they marketed it and everything else?
Are you talking about for Kenmore?
Yeah.
So Kenmore's a little bit of a different situation because they don't provide the utilities. Auburn provides water and sewer service. Kenmore has a separate district that offers those services. And so that bright line is pretty clear in Kenmore.
As you pointed out in one of these other things, most people, not most people, but a lot of people think that we have to repair their private lines. So by putting our logo on and giving a clear explanation that, you know, this is what we're responsible for, this is what we're not responsible for, might be a good education piece if they would let, if UPSP would let us put that kind of an explanation on it.
Well,
Yes, Bill.
this is similar offering that National League of Cities has to the free card program for prescriptions. You know, yeah, he's got a, you know.
Yeah,
here
it
it is here.
does say Auburn and.
But I also think that, again, it's a little clear, we don't provide prescriptions for
No.
our customers.
No.
Whereas in this situation, we do provide water and sewer service to our customers. So when you put the logo on there, given that we are the ones that they're getting their water and sewer bill from as well, I think it can blur those lines.
So the representative has, sorry.
But you could put a NLC logo on, I'm sure, because that's part of their program. You know, put the NLC logo on, and then get us totally out of liability. I'm sure it would work.
I'm not totally convinced that our homeowners insurance doesn't cover.
No.
It's out,
No.
it's outside the
No.
building.
Doesn't.
They aren't covered.
I say I've been trying for 6 years to get that coverage.
Yeah. It's,
Well, it sounds like we're willing to take the next step, which is for you to bring us actually a contract and a resolution or whatever it takes. But I think you're hearing a consensus that we'd rather not show our logo, although I think it is worth asking USP if we can put an education paragraph in there.
what paragraph?
An education paragraph that we aren't responsible for.
Disclaimer.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Oh, yeah.
And I like the idea of including the graphics that shows this is what you're
Oh,
brought in
oh,
this.
yeah.
'Cause
Yeah, that was good.
that's
Yep.
really helpful for the person like myself who thought everything was covered by their homeowners.
The company's representative has offered to come and speak to the council if you'd like. They're based out of Pennsylvania, so it's something I would need to schedule with him when he's on the West Coast.
I think
But
that's
he's
worth
been-
doing, but I'd like to see the actual contract and be more prepared to ask them specific questions.
So in negotiating that contract, I heard some concerns about the royalty, but some ideas about do we accept or do something else? Is there any preferences about the royalty issue, decline it all
I'd say no.
outright?
I'd like to see
we
the
don't wanna obligate
rolled back
ourselves.
into their fees and lowering their rates.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Bill?
Yeah, we don't want to obligate ourselves.
Okay, anything else? Good, thank you.
Thanks.
One down.
Okay, next is the Pierce County Flood Control District. Are you the same people?
I am the same people. So the Pierce County Flood Control Zone District is very similar to the King County Flood Control District in that they collect a portion of property tax levies to fund flood control projects within their jurisdiction. In the case of Auburn, this pink area down in the southern part of Lakeland Hills is the portion that is in the Pierce County Flood Control District. That district was formed in 2012 and gets its funding from, as I said, property tax levies. It's about 10 cents per $1,000 of assessed valuation. So for most properties, almost all properties, it would be less than $100 a year. Of that, 10% of those levy monies that are collected go into what is called an opportunity fund that comes back to Auburn to let us use that money for flood control projects in the White River Basin in Pierce County, so again, in the pink area. In order to get access to that opportunity fund, we would need to sign an interlocal agreement with the Pierce County Flood Control Zone District. And once we have that interlocal agreement authorized, then we can choose to either use the money or roll it over from year to year. And some of the types of potential projects that we would do with that money would be promote.
I'm sorry, is there any way we can get a map of that?
The map that I have, yes,
Yeah,
I
is
can,
there
we
any way
can mail that.
Thank you.
Low impact development, either education or retrofit projects to put in rain gardens, bioretention, pervious pavement, education. Maintenance and operation, buying equipment necessary to maintain the ponds, culverts that are in the White River Basin. Making improvements to the stormwater control facilities that we have within that basin, like outfalls, although we're not tributary to the White River right there, so culverts and so forth. And watershed and habitat protection, so enhancing the watershed. And most importantly, educating our customers and property owners on the importance of cleaning up after their pets, since that's a large portion of the hazards to the environment. So the next, So the next steps are that we'd like to bring to you at the August 7th meeting a resolution to adopt that interlocal agreement. And a copy of that resolution and the agreement was included in your packet. If the council approves that resolution on the 7th, then we would send to the Flood Control District in August our notification of our intent to just allow those funds to accrue so that we can build up enough of a reserve to actually do something really beneficial with it. Right now we only have about $32,000 after the 4 years that it's been in effect, so we'd like to accumulate that so that we can buy a piece of equipment that we need or do some projects. And we'll be spending some time in the next budget cycle strategizing for what those future projects might be. Any questions?
No.
Who attends from the city of Auburn these district meetings or advisory meetings, or who attends?
We have not gotten involved in this district yet. As I said, it's fairly new. It's only been in effect for about 4 years, and they're just kind of getting their feet under them.
I don't know that we have a permanent seat like we do at the King County Flood Control District, so it's a little different situation than King County.
I would think that the city of Auburn should be at that table.
Maybe, although not many of our rivers go through Pierce County.
That's true.
There's a little bit, well, there may not be any.
It's a very,
Gregson is up there.
yeah, the river within Auburn is not actually in Pierce County, so if you can back up to the map again, it's just the pink area on the map that we're really looking at where we can spend money from this as well as what we're doing. So it's basically a little bit of Lakeland Hills area. Which is why I don't believe we have a permanent seat at the table on that particular district, because we're not a significant member.
Solve the fecal matter problem in the fish pond at Lakeland, at the bottom of Lakeland.
The problem is that that's actually in King County and not in Pierce County.
But it's being fed by all the pets up on Lakeland.
Flows downhill.
Yep.
Okay, so you're gonna bring us an agreement to approve?
Correct.
Okay, good.
Thank you so much.
All right, state traffic control signals in Auburn Way South and 18.
So a few months ago during, I think, the last special focus area for this, we talked a little bit about the signals on Auburn Way South at the SR-18 ramps. And I had mentioned that we were working with the state, and the state had come to us asking whether or not we wanted to take over maintenance responsibilities on those signals. So in talking with Chair Wagner for this meeting, I don't really have any new information to add, so this is just more of an update for you of kind of where we're at in the process. And I also wanted to point out that as much as we have operational control today without the maintenance responsibility, I don't know that we're going to see much difference in what we can do operationally at those 2 signals for taking on the additional cost of the maintenance. Still waiting for the state to actually give us some more details so that we can actually get into that. But because the main control that we have there is that we're not allowed to back up the signal or the ramps onto the freeway, I don't see them letting that go and having that situation where potentially traffic is backing up onto the freeway.
Well, I guess we need to see what their specific request is before we can say whether we like it or not.
Correct.
Because having real control would be great, but if we have too many restrictions on it, it would be.
When do you meet with these people, or is there a specific group that you meet with?
It's not a set meeting. It's the signal group within WashDOT that we are working with to try to get the information. So the last request that we had to them was to provide us, one, what did it mean to do maintenance work, and what are the maintenance efforts that they have been doing and their general costs for those, as well as what are the operational restrictions that we would have to be working under. And the main thing there's 2 things. If ramp meters were ever added to those ramps, that would put a lot more restrictions on what we can and can't do, as well as we're right now, because of the configuration of those 2 ramps, we can't back the traffic up onto Highway 18. And the most significant one for that is actually the westbound off-ramp, because we can only stack about 10 cars making that left turn movement. And what we're seeing is we have a fairly heavy left turn movement from there that is then making an immediate right onto 6th Street Southeast. And so that is really kind of the controlling movement between both of those signals right now is that movement during the peak.
Well, I guess we need to see the details of what have they been spending on maintenance, what would we have to spend, and what freedom will we have to
exactly
adjust the timing.
Because it could be possible that we really can't adjust anything because of the backup, and then we're just getting the cost for their maintenance.
And that is certainly a possibility, and I think that's where my concern and my staff's concerns are, is to not get into that situation.
So you're going to go ahead and try to get that information?
We're continuing to try to get the information from WashDOT. They've been slow in being responsive.
Mm-hmm. Plus the big factor, liability.
Those were some of the questions that we asked them, is liability, especially for signal equipment when it gets hit by a third party. Is that our responsibility to fix, or is that still the state's responsibility, since they would maintain ownership of the signal? So that is all things that we need clarification from them.
Yes.
On last Friday, I had a tour of the City of Bellevue's traffic control office. And they use a computer program called Skate or SCAR or...
SCADA?
Not SCAR, that sounds bad. Skate sounds a little better than SCAR.
Yeah, not like SCADA, like our water system, but it was an acronym, and I'm sorry I didn't know this was, sorry, I can't remember the name of the program, but it was approved by WashDOT, and the City of Bellevue controls all state cameras because the system is approved, and it senses how far cars are backed up, and it's all part of this logarithm. Now, I'm not saying we go out and spend $1 bazillion to buy this system, but...
And for those systems, because I believe that's some of the adaptive management that they're doing up there, it's not just buying it for the 1 signal or 2 signals. You need to do the whole corridor and everything that's connected to it in order for it to function appropriately. And you're probably looking at about $100,000 to $150,000 per signal for a system like that.
It's not that I don't trust the motives.
Not that I wouldn't want it, but
I don't know if I trust the motives of the state. Why would they even be interested in us assuming the maintenance of that?
Save some money.
Save their money.
Yeah.
Save, they're struggling with resources just like everybody else is, especially when it comes to signals, especially when they're spread out throughout the whole state with a few signals here and there that they manage.
When do you think you'll be back with the details?
would love to give you a perfect estimate, but I've already been waiting about 3 months for the state, so I don't know how long it's gonna take me to get that.
It's probably gonna be another 3 months. Okay, we won't put it on the matrix then. John?
One last point. If there is one traffic signal that I do get constituent complaints on, it's this one.
Same here.
So,
Agreed. And, you know, the staff have done everything they can at those 2 signals, but it is really the off-ramp traffic and the backup from those off-ramp traffic that is controlling what we can and can't do. And when those get out of sync with the other signals in the corridor, it's because we have to let that traffic go.
The new interchange that they may put in at the tribe's expense down by the gravel pit, have you been involved in that at all? Because the tribe's gonna be leading it, I guess. But I wonder if they would have in that a widening of the road, so you could have a big stack coming westbound.
So right now, that is in the very preliminary stages of really concept development, alternative analysis development. And so those are all lots of the questions that we still have as to how far are we analyzing on the corridor to see what those improvements are that would actually address the congestion issue on 164.
Well, it's not very far away from that interchange. I think it should be analyzed.
Yeah, and a lot of what they are doing, because we're anticipating that they're going to have federal funds in whatever project gets developed. They've got to look at basically start over again, start at square zero, and figure out, can they do anything without building an interchange to address the issue first? So that might be improvements at M Street, it might be improvements at Auburn Way and 6th, it might be other improvements down the corridor, it might be improvements to Auburn Black Diamond. It just, they have to look at all of that, as well as the scenarios of what would a new interchange potentially look like.
Yeah, that's good.
That intersection is kind of one of the center points of people entering our town, and I believe there's been some beautification or hillside work done that I assume was done by the Department of Transportation.
No, that's actually our Parks Department that has been doing that.
Well, the bottom foot of it, they never finished it all the way out to the street. And now they've put vegetation kill. So we've got a lovely hillside and then a collar of ratty grass that goes around the edge of the whole thing. I appreciate the loitering signs that have been put up for the people who are there seeking assistance. But we need to get rid of them. And what does can we arrest people when there's a I don't even know how to say
I'm
it.
going to defer
So
that.
why do we have the sign there if you can't arrest them? And then we allow them to stand there. We're kind of giving a mixed message that maybe it's better not to have the stand, the trees, or the sign.
You know, we have been trying to come up with some language that would be at least more enforceable.
Okay.
And we have to contend with the fact that the courts, some recent court decisions have made it at least more challenging to make sure that we get the language we need. And we may be seeing some changes in signs pretty soon.
Good, because I mean, when they're there and it just makes us look like we're not enforcing our rules, it'd be better just to take them down and then pull the weeds.
Well, but then, I know we can't do a loitering in general law because ACLU would grab us in a minute, but we're loitering in a place where they cause traffic safety problems. Seems like we ought to be able to write something that says you're causing a safety problem.
Actually, that's exactly what we're going to be trying to focus on.
Good.
Okay, because it is a safety and visibility issue.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we're done with that one. No, we're
Chair.
not. Bill, go ahead.
Thought occurred to me. Dan, why couldn't we have loitering and do not litter?
Yeah.
I've seen signs somewhere, Dan, that says littering, and then a big dollar fine.
Littering is a legitimate criminal violation. Catching people might be the hardest part about that, but if we can catch somebody littering or prove that somebody littered, that can be charged.
Can we put litter signs up with loitering where we've been discussing?
Sure.
I think the best thing might be for you to figure out a good sign that's reasonable and enforceable. Because when I've tried to enforce some of those things, you have to take a picture of the person dropping the paper cup or something, you know, and that's not likely to happen. But we need something there that's enforceable or nothing at all.
Well, we will try to get something back to you.
Caution, Agent Orange in use.
No banana peels.
Caution over 65-year-old drivers.
Okay, interlocal agreement for IT services, that must be Paul or Ashley or somebody.
Yep. Although Ingrid and Lisa could just wrap it up since they've done so many.
I always love hearing from you.
Okay, so this will be really quick unless there's questions, and I'm happy to go over those questions. But as you know, we currently have ILAs with City of Algona, City of Pacific, and VRFA. In your packet, I provided a quick summary that just summarizes those three. All three of those have expired and are currently operating on a month-to-month basis. So we are still doing the same service, it's just on a month-to-month. They've all expired within the past, I'd say, 9 months at different points. So what we're looking to do at this point is just get all of them on the same term, get them all with the same service level agreements, the same services. The only thing that you'll see different in the agreements is, I believe, Exhibit A, which lays out the exact services that we're providing, which then affects the dollar amount. City of Pacific, you can see, has a higher dollar amount because we're providing more services. Algona, on the flip side, a much smaller amount because we provide a lot smaller service level to them. Same quality of service, just different types of services. And then VRFA is a little bit different because we're not doing IT specific, we're doing GIS specific services. Outside of that, the dollar amounts have not changed, the level of service has not changed, we just really fine-tuned. We learned a lot over the last cycle with the agreements, so this time we just fine-tuned a few things, but they are all word for word the same. So I will leave it at that and open it up for questions.
Page 48. Excuse me. Article 13, insurance. Dan, can we zero those out, please? Okay.
We'll do what we can.
What? Do we can, come on, proactive, man.
Some of these contracts are
But
written-
these are our contracts.
Okay, if we have them in form, we'll do that.
Page 52. If you look at the Algona signature, see Rod P. Casaguma, we should have a space there or round that down underneath him, Algona City Attorney.
I see that.
Just to be a little professional, that's all. Let's see, page, I'll start with page 56. Look under billing, middle of the page, you've got $500. Now, what's the description of that? Shouldn't we have a description of that $500? Is that the total annual estimated cost?
This is on page 56, you said?
50, oh, I apologize, you guys. Page 55.
It says monthly costs.
Yeah, I know. But
Okay, the $500 refers to a general support as outlined in Exhibit A. Did you want more than that, or?
well, normally you have total cost, whatever.
So just to
The
elaborate.
$500 just hanging out there, then take it out. remove it.
So the way this is written, and I'm happy to adjust it, but each one of these, that top thing is the monthly charge. That is a fixed monthly charge.
Yeah.
That is the monthly cost for this agreement. Everything below it, it's basically specifying it's outside of this agreement. We will do it, but these are gonna be the charges for that.
Why is the $500 hanging out there like a
Total.
missing election
It's a
tab?
total.
It's a total.
The total.
Okay,
Look over on the other
then
page.
let's put total.
Yes, we do that, but over on the other page, you got the same thing with the
I know,
9,619.
what I'm saying is, describe it. That's all I'm saying. Can you describe it, Dan?
We will certainly endeavor to do so before it comes back.
Okay, page 56. At the very top, same thing with that $9,619. It should have a description.
What you just said.
I'm making those points, I'm making those notes.
All right, and then if you look at the variable costs, $120.00 per hour. And then if you look at additional services, what does N/A mean? It means a lot. I know. It means a lot to a lot of people. Not applicable, other
Not
things.
available.
Yeah, exactly. So what does that mean? If it's not applicable, then let's say not applicable or not, yeah. Well, I know it's.
Operating hours, additional services could be during any time, so it's not applicable to identify specific hours because
Okay.
it could be any hours.
It could be to be
All I'm
scheduled.
saying is we have to describe the acronym. That's all.
Okay, okay.
And then under that same line, 120.00. And then if you say with a 1, there's a spacing problem there. See it, Dan? Dan?
I see.
These are little nits. These are not things
Look,
that
it's-
have to be,
It has to be if we're going to do a professional contract.
this is a professional contract, whether there's a space between
It's not.
the amounts or not.
It is administratively not professional to have.
These are nits. These are.
Yeah, they
things
are
that-
nits, but.
That you've been asked in the past to just provide your markup to Dan, and we can take care of those.
Okay, I'll give you this whole page, Dan.
Again, not all of these documents are created by us, but we will endeavor to correct
I'll give
everything we
you,
can.
I'll give you my markups.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ashley or anybody? Okay, thanks, Ashley.
Okay, we're going to move on to other discussion items. Any other discussion items for tonight before we move into new business and matrix? New business. We can always come back to new business, probably not parliamentarily, but let's move into the matrix and we'll maybe think of other things we need to talk about. The matrix, I believe, is your last two colored pages. Any changes, additions that you would like to see recorded? Councilmember Holman.
Deputy Mayor Selection Ad Hoc Committee report now has an action date.
Great, thank you. Action date, and that's our next meeting is, okay, 8/7.
I guess item 3 on Public Works needs to get a new date, the next meeting.
Okay.
For capital projects, which would be 9/11, I guess.
Okay.
To Mr. Wagner's point, if that capital projects update doesn't fall within your review time, it could be added to agenda anywhere in the future if you don't want to wait till 9/11.
9/11 sounds like a bad time to wait for it.
Well, I mean, it just seems a bit off for capital projects is all I'm saying, is we don't have to wait to the next focus area.
Do people want an update sooner than that?
Which one are you talking about?
The capital projects
Number 3.
update. Number 3 on the Council Matrix.
Yes.
You want it sooner? Yeah, you wanted to see about 104th, and I passed that on to him, so.
That's what I'm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Ingrid, we need to move that up, so I'm not sure what the date should be until Ingrid
We
has
were
a chance to
planning
think
on
about it.
doing that on August 14th, do the
Okay.
capital project.
Perfect.
14th, okay.
Great. Number 4, Community Sustainability Series. Scheduled for later this year. We'll wait and see what materializes. Number 5, 6, number 7.
It's good, 8:28.
Okay. And District Court briefing.
It's
This is-
good, too.
Okay. How about finance?
Remove business licensing, we had that today.
Okay, remove it.
And then the chief has one to add.
Okay.
Okay, we talked to Sean.
What is that, so everybody knows?
We are calling that update on police calls for mental health issues, and it will
Okay.
be on the
Great.
8/28 meeting.
Bob has, we'll schedule another quarter financial report when Shelley gives us the heads up. Yolanda, under 11?
Yeah, I think we talked to Dana about this, and they're getting information on all that.
And I'd like to see an item added there under 11, where Yolanda and I'll share some of the block grant parameters that we've been discussing with staff.
CDBG?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Dr. Mayor, what did you?
Block grant parameters presented by Yolanda and Wales. It would be, let's see, September 11th.
Yeah.
Okay. While you're thinking, any more discussion items, new business matrix? Then I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm glad you don't ever ask for